Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I will be running through all of my early transfer tips ahead of Game Week 12 in FPL. Welcome back everyone to another video. Today I'll be running through my transfer tips ahead of Game Week 12. Of course, we're running into an international break, so you might want to come back to this in a week or so as well, but it's always nice to get out a bit of content for those of you who want to start thinking about your early transfer plans ahead of the deadline. If you did enjoy today's video, if you could do me a favor and hit like, but importantly, subscribe to the channel, especially because we're only 150 subscribers away from 5,000 now. Now, I would love to hit that target before we get to 2026. So if you can help me on my way, that would be truly, greatly appreciated. In the meantime, let's talk about one of the heroes from Game Week 11. That is Thiago, who's now hit 8 goals in 11 Premier League games this season with another brace at the weekend. There's so much going for this guy as an FPL pick. It's actually kind of ridiculous how he's only 6.3 million at this point in time. That is so cheap for a player who gets 90 minutes a match, is on penalties, and has very good underlying data, 0.57 XG per 90. That is with penalties included, but I do think it's important to weigh that in because it's not like he's had 10 penalties already. He's still getting good underlying data, even without the penalties. But you do still have to factor in that the chances are that they will get the odd penalty every now and then. So good underlying data, fantastic price point, 6.3 million. He's so easy to get to. And he's got good fixtures over the next few game weeks as well. So Brighton, on paper, not a bad fixture, but then Burnley at home is the one that you really want to be targeting. Arsenal away and Tottenham away, on paper, don't look great. Arsenal away, no one's going to contest that. That is not going to be an easy one. But then Tottenham away after that, I wouldn't be that fearful of, considering their recent form. I think it's a great little run. And it goes on beyond this as well, by the way. I think through the Christmas period, if you've got yourself a cheap striker who's nailed into the starting 11 on penalties, who's going to start every single week, I think you're looking pretty solid for that Christmas congested period. Now, the other thing to note with Thiago is whether or not he's an essential player to be ripping up your team for this game week. Now, I would place him as maybe the second or third most important striker, or best striker, I suppose, to be having in your FPL team. No one's selling Erling Haaland for him, so that's the number one spot taken. I think if you've got Mateta, or if you're still in a position where you can get to Mateta, he's probably number 2. And then Thiago, for me, would be a close third. I don't think there's much between Mateta and Thiago. And especially because Thiago is quite a lot cheaper, I think there is an argument to say if you don't have Mateta now, you could have a pretty strong case made for saying, okay, I'll just save the money, I'll go with Thiago. I think over the next stretch, Mateta's got the better fixtures, and I think he will come out on top. But I don't think there's going to be tons between the two, and that extra 1.7 million I think between them now can be better spent elsewhere potentially. So I personally don't have either of them right now. There are routes that I really like that involve getting Mateta, but also routes I really like that involve getting Thiago, and it enables me to use that money in other ways, which could be really powerful and maybe provide more upside than Mateta would over Thiago. Either way, I think Thiago is a great buy this game week. I don't think he's a must buy, but if you've already got Haaland and Mateta, after that, it's whether or not you want to play with 3 strikers. If you want to play with 3 strikers, Thiago is probably the perfect third striker. If you want to play with 2 strikers, it's a bit of a head-to-head between a Mateta and a Thiago, and then the conversation becomes a lot more difficult to figure out which one comes out on top. It depends about your structure, and it depends what else you might want to do with that money, but he's certainly in the conversation, and he is a player that is right at the top of my wish list going into Game Week 12. Okay, so let's take this opportunity to talk about someone who has been a little bit frustrating recently, to say the least. Antoine Semenyo got off to an unbelievable start this season in FPL. Obviously, the highlight against Fulham, bagging a brace, getting an assist, absolutely phenomenal. I wildcarded the game week after that, and since that point in time, I think he's blanked twice, missed a penalty, and maybe assisted once. So he's been incredibly frustrating in the last few game weeks, and the variance, or I suppose luck, has really run out on him in the last couple of weeks in particular, especially the missed penalty in game week 11. Now, that, I believe, was his only shot on goal, or certainly his only major chance in game week 11. I think he put up 0.79 XG. And I think 0.78 of that was the penalty. So he didn't really have the best day at the office in game week 11. And the data has dropped off a little bit. So is he still a player that we want in our FPL teams, especially considering he's owned by so many managers? 64% of the game own him. Can you look at gaining an edge by getting rid of him or just going without him? Well, last few game weeks, obviously, not been getting the attacking returns, but it is still worth noting that if you distributed the returns evenly, he's got a 10 attacking returns in 11 game weeks, which is brilliant for the price. He is on penalties, especially when Kluivert is off the pitch, which Kluivert's minutes just have not been great this season. So he's still got a good chance of taking penalties, even if he has missed one recently. And the underlying data is still pretty good. 0.42 XG per 90 isn't bad. It's not anywhere near what it was a few game weeks ago, but it's still not terrible. And I'd expect that to sort of even out over a long run average anyway. I think the key thing with Semenyo, and the reason that I am in no way tempted to be getting rid of him anytime soon, is the last 3 game weeks haven't been the easiest on paper anyway. And now he's coming into a run of fixtures that I would expect him to probably start ticking up in the underlying data, in the attacking returns once again. So I think if you haven't gotten rid of him already, then he's probably a very strong hold, if not arguably even a player to be buying ahead of the next run. FPL is a game of trying to predict when the next returns are coming, not trying to chase what's just happened. And although I can probably be accused of chasing it by wildcarding into him after his haul against Fulham, this is the run that I'd really want him for anyway. West Ham at home, Sunderland away, Everton at home, Chelsea at home, maybe not great, but 3 home games in the next 4. And by the time we get to game week 13, 14, 15 is 3 games in a week anyway. And then we have another block of that around the Christmas period too. It's exactly this moment in the season where you want someone who's getting 90 minutes a match, who's got good underlying data, who has very low risk of rotation whatsoever. You want security of minutes, penalties as well, good underlying data. He does still tick all of those boxes. So however frustrating he's been in the last few game weeks, I would still say he's a fantastic player to be owning, considering the next few weeks on the radar and the fact that he will be someone you can rely on week in, week out over a really busy Christmas period. So for me, the form has left him, but I think it will probably come back fairly soon, given the fixtures that are upcoming for Bournemouth. So if someone at the start of the season had told me we get to game week 12, where Liverpool have a fantastic run of fixtures on the horizon, and we would be all wondering which, if any, Liverpool players we're going to be buying, I'd have thought they'd be joking. But here we are, game week 12, great fixtures to come. Forest, West Ham, Sunderland, Leeds, Brighton, Spurs, about as good as you could ask for. The list goes on after that as well, by the way. And we're all kind of looking around wondering, do we even need to be buying Liverpool players considering the form that they've been in? But there are other factors as well. So let's start off with the most expensive of the lot, Mo Salah. 14.2 million. The underlying data hasn't been as good as we normally expect from him, but it's still been ticking upwards recently. So he's not in the worst form. I think the problem with him is because he's so expensive and because Erling Haaland, who is also even more expensive now, is just seemingly so important to all of our FPL sides. We're not going without Erling Haaland, or very few of us will. So then it's a question of, can we incorporate both of them? And that just seems like we'd be sacrificing too much elsewhere to cram in 2 assets that are above 14 million. Will Mo Salah do well in the next run of games? I'm pretty confident he will get goals. That's a great run of fixtures. The data's look better. I'm sure he'll tick along and get the odd, more than the odd goal. I expect him to do pretty well. But will he do significantly better than Erling Haaland? And therefore, can you swap between the two? I'm not confident enough to say yes. Will you be captaining Mo Salah in the majority of these game weeks, and therefore you'll buy him and captain him and get more benefit from him? I think considering Erling Haaland's form and his fixtures as well, there's a real debate as to whether or not you would be captaining Mo Salah in these weeks. And then after that, what are you sacrificing to have both of them? Even if you're not captaining Mo Salah, is it going to be worth it? And I'd say it's very, very unlikely it's going to make any logical sense to do it if you're not captaining him whatsoever, especially because he's 4.2 million more expensive, or 4.1 million more expensive than the next closest viable option in midfield. That's Saka. So you need to find that extra 4.1 million somewhere. That would be at least 2 or 3 downgrades across your 11, across your 15. And those would be pretty significant downgrades as well. And then on top of that, if you've got Saka, is he even a sell right now? Do you even want to be getting rid of him, or a Bruno Fernandez, or an Mbeumo? Some of the most expensive midfielders right now are doing pretty reasonably well. Are you going to even want to get rid of them? And therefore, Erling Haaland plus an Mbeumo or a Fernandez, maybe a Saka in there. Can you find other ways of affording Salah? I don't think you can. So it's just one of those positions where you're sure he'll do well, or at least I'm pretty sure he'll do reasonably well, but is it going to be well enough to make it worth the price and worth all the sacrifices elsewhere? I'm just not sure it is. Now, let's move across to the other options. Gakpo, until recently, probably would have been top of the billing for me. But in the last week, he's kind of lost his place a little bit on that left-hand side. Do I expect him to come back in and regain his starting 11 spot on the left-hand side? Yeah, probably. But the minutes will now be a doubt moving forwards. And we're about to hit this period of fixtures where they will probably have to rotate because they're playing 3 fixtures a week. Will Gakpo play all of the minutes? Probably not. Wirtz can play there. Obviously, we've seen that in the last couple of weeks. Did he play well against Man City? Absolutely not. But we know that he at least can play there, so kind of ruins Gakpo as an option for me personally. After that, the other two I'd probably look at are Van Dijk and Szoboszlai. Van Dijk, defensively, Liverpool have not been great recently, but the fixtures are good enough that I'd probably still be willing to back Liverpool defensively. Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Sunderland, Leeds, they don't score tons of goals. So if Van Dijk can get a few DEFCON points in that period, get the odd clean sheet, and maybe get lucky with an attacking return, which we know he's got potential for, I still think he could be a decent option. Is he a must-buy? Absolutely not. But if you've got a route to him that you can get to fairly easily with maybe one free transfer, or maybe you can free up some money elsewhere to get to him and have a bit of a stronger back four, maybe it's worth doing. Szoboszlai is the other one that I'd probably be considering, mainly because he's had very good minutes so far. He's been on set pieces and he's got the odd DEFCON as well. Will he hit it every week? No, but we know that he's got that potential and he's got those different routes to points with the set pieces as well. And he's at a reasonable enough price point. I still don't know if he's going to be anywhere significantly better than some of the other 6.5 to 7 million midfielders. So again, another player that I think if you've got the spare spot, then it makes sense to go there. But again, you just don't need to do it. I don't think he's an essential player to be buying. I think he'll tick along pretty well in this next run, but will it be way better than some of the other midfielders around this price point, like a Ndai, a Sarr, an Enzo? I mean, a few of them have been pretty frustrating recently, but some of them have got penalties. They've got much better underlying attacking data. I don't think it's a clear-cut choice between any of those options. And I don't think Szoboszlai's miles ahead, but he can still do pretty well. So of the options, unfortunately, Ekitike and Isak are just non-options right now because we don't know how their minutes are going to be shared. Gakpo, I've got serious doubts over his expected minutes. Wirtz, I've got no confidence in. Salah, I do have confidence in, but probably too expensive for me to be ripping up my side to get there. So that does kind of just leave Van Dijk and Szoboszlai. Maybe Konate, if you're looking at Liverpool defensively, you think they're going to get some clean sheets and you think that he's going to get good minutes, could be another option. But all I'm trying to say is none of them are essential by any means. And if you're a form-led manager, then it probably doesn't make sense to go there. If you're more of a fixtures-led manager, these are good fixtures. And I do expect Liverpool to win the majority of these games. It's just, where are the points coming from? Do you know for sure which of these players are going to be getting the returns? And are they going to be that much better than the alternatives with other clubs at those price points? I'm not massively confident that they are. That being said, over the next week or two, I can see routes that I quite like in my personal team to get to Van Dijk or Szoboszlai that I don't mind, but I'm not going to be ripping up my team to do it. And if I get to that point and the players that I'm looking at selling are doing pretty well, I'd be happy enough holding on to them. I don't think I need to get any of these players. So really strange situation to be in, considering the fixtures and considering it's such a good team with so many good options normally in FPL. But FPL moves really fast and it's a bit of a weird situation. So yeah, I don't think they're essential, but maybe not bad. If you're brave, you could go for Salah and maybe it'll work out. Maybe Van Dijk, Szoboszlai as well, but yeah, like I said, probably not essential. So another key debate in the international break will be which Man United midfielder seems like the more important one to be buying going into game week 12 for what is a good fixture run for Man United, starting off with Everton at home, followed by Crystal Palace, West Ham, and then Wolves. Good run of fixtures. It goes on after that as well. So which of the two, Fernandez or Mbeumo, seems like the more important one to be buying? And I don't want to sit on the fence, and I don't want this to be a cop-out section because there are benefits and drawbacks to both of them. But honestly, they're both really good players to be buying this week. They're both putting up good underlying data, both north of 0.5 XGI per 90. Yes, Mbeumo's is more heavily leaning towards goal threat, and Fernandez is probably more towards the assist threat, but both are returning pretty well recently. Fernandez has picked up 3 assists in his last 4 and has a bit of DEFCON threat as well. Mbeumo has picked up plenty of attacking returns, more leaning towards goals recently as well, and is a little bit cheaper. What should be noted, though, is that there is only 0.4 between the two of them now. I think if there was 1 million between them, Mbeumo would be the clear standout for me. But they are getting pretty close on price right now. And although I back Mbeumo to score more goals, and I think he is a fantastic option, we do need to start thinking on the horizon we've got AFCON. And in, I think, 6 game weeks' time, Mbeumo will have to go off to the African Cup of Nations. So if you buy him now, then it's another transfer out in a few game weeks' time. And yes, we will get the 5 free transfers around that time, so you can use them in an aggressive way to get rid of any AFCON players, including Mbeumo. You might have Sarr, you might have Ndai, you might have a few of them. You can just get rid of all of them all at once at that point in time. So if you're more of an aggressive manager, even with a shorter time frame, I still think Mbeumo makes a lot of sense to be going there. And I think he's more likely of the two to get the big haul. I think because he's got the goal threat in any given game week, and you've got some good fixtures to come, he could spike a couple of goals in any of these weeks. Maybe Crystal Palace is the toughest one there, but outside of that, I could see him bagging a brace against any of Everton, West Ham, or Wolves. No problem there. However, he won't do it in all of those game weeks, and he is another transfer out later on down the line. So if you're an aggressive player, you don't mind the future transfer, and he is a little bit less expensive, but you don't mind the fact that he is a bit more expensive than he was recently, then I think Mbeumo still makes a lot of sense. However, if you're a long-term planner and you don't want to use those 5 free transfers in an aggressive way when they come for AFCON, and you want to save them for later on in the season, maybe around a chip, maybe around saving a free hit when we get to a blank game week, or maybe in an aggressive way around Christmas, and you don't want to use the 5 free transfers on getting rid of AFCON players, then Fernandez is a player that, honestly, he's going to serve you right for a very long period of time. Obviously, won't go off to AFCON, and the fixture run for Man United through the African Cup of Nations is also very, very positive. I just don't think you can really go wrong with buying Bruno Fernandes. He's only 0.4 million more expensive than Mbeumo, obviously has the benefit of very good fixtures as well, has DEFCON, much more likely than Mbeumo, not every week, but more likely than Mbeumo, has good assist threat and decent goal threat, and he has penalties as well. He just ticks all of the boxes. So I think you're more likely to spike a haul or two out of Mbeumo, but Fernandez will tick along very nicely. He will probably average 6, maybe 7 points if we're lucky over this run, and also saves you a transfer later on down the line. So I don't want to sit here and say one is far better than the other, because I really like Mbeumo. He's a fantastic FPL option, but Fernandez is now only 0.4 million more expensive, and it does save a transfer. So it all comes down to playstyle for me. But I do just have a feeling that Fernandez is about to kick on and become a very good FPL asset. He's been points dodging a little bit this season. He's got so many routes to points, and Fernandez has always talked about both positively and negatively. You've got people who sit on both sides of the fence. Some people absolutely hate him as an FPL option because he sits too deep. He doesn't have enough goal threat. He's very, very boring, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters with FPL is the amount of points they get. And although he hasn't quite hit the heights yet, I can't escape the feeling that he is about to kick on as an FPL option. And he's just got all of those different ways of scoring points that one week it's all going to just come together and he is going to get a really big haul all of a sudden. So it's a tough one. I'm on the fence myself over which one I prefer. And Mbeumo is a very good option, but I think saving the transfer later on down the line for 0.4 million more does appeal to me as well. So possibly I just about prefer Fernandez, but if you can use that 0.4 million elsewhere for good benefit, then Mbeumo is also very, very good. They're both great options. I don't even hate having both of them, to be honest. And if you've got Mbeumo already, you are loving life. Fernandez, though, still a good option. They're both good options. Okay, so let's wrap up with a player that has been points dodging like crazy recently. Enzo Fernandez has been putting up some really good underlying data, but the only thing that matters in FPL is whether or not they're actually getting the returns, and this man is unquestionably failing in that regard. 3 goals, 2 assists this season. All of them came much earlier on. Since I wildcarded, he's done nothing for me. 0.47 XG per 90 and 0.17 XA per 90 suggests that he is getting pretty unfortunate not to get anything. And however frustrating he's been, I just don't know if I can get on board with selling him this game week ahead of Burnley away. If he fails again against Burnley, I think I am probably going to be pretty confident just to get rid of him, even if the data's good, even if he gets unlucky yet again. Arsenal at home seems like a very good excuse to be getting rid of him. But for me, I think he's worth holding on to for one more game week, especially because he is taking a rest in the international break. He's not going away on international duty with Argentina. He's going to rest up, probably come back fully fit for Burnley. If he's still a doubt going into Burnley and we don't know whether he's going to start that game, then I would probably bring that transfer forward for a week and get rid of him straight away. But a bit like what I said about Saka last game week or João Pedro a couple of weeks before, with the fixtures to come, I just feel like there's going to be some sort of rebalancing that will come over the next few game weeks, that he'll spike a couple of returns at random and it will all just seem rosy again. It'll all balance out and all of that good underlying data he's been putting up will be corrected by the fact that he actually gets the returns in one game week. Now, is that going to come against Burnley? Who knows? But Burnley is about as good a fixtures as they're going to get. And is it the most likely fixture that he could return in? Yeah, probably. So I think he's worth holding on to for one more game week. And then if he fails yet again, even if he doesn't fail, to be fair, you could still arguably get rid of him ahead of game week 13 against Arsenal. But I don't think he's a bad player to be holding on to because he does get the minutes. He might have penalties whilst Cole Palmer's still out. The underlying data is still pretty good. I don't think he's worth getting rid of right now. So I'm going to be holding on to him for another week, I think. But let's monitor whether or not the injury that he's picked up is something that might keep him out of game week 12. Because if it is, and he's a doubt, then of course he is a player that you can look at getting rid of pretty quickly. Anyway, as we reach the end of today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time as we run through some of my early transfer plans going into Game Week 12.